In the unending silent ballet of the cosmos, there are rules. There are grand, overarching principles that govern the rise of stars and the majestic waltz of galaxies across billions of years. Gravity, the great shepherd, pulls matter into celestial flocks. Light, the universe's ultimate messenger, travels at a constant, unbreakable speed. And at the end of a massive star's life, there is a predictable, violent, and beautiful finale, a supernova. And from its ashes, a new kind of object is born, a gravitational titan so powerful that it devours light itself, a black hole. We have come to understand these celestial leviathans. We have charted their behaviours, predicted their effects, and even photographed their haunting silhouettes. They are a known, if terrifying, part of the cosmic ecosystem. But out there, in the lonely darkness between constellations, in a patch of sky once considered unremarkable, we have found something else, something that breaks the rules. Something that defies our most fundamental understanding of reality. It has been given the sterile, unassuming designation AT25P45. But those who study it have other names for it. A wound in the universe, a patch of nothingness, a cosmic hole, and absolutely nothing about it is normal. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a quiet absence. A single point of data missing from a star chart. The Sutherland Deep Sky Survey in South Africa, a tireless robotic sentinel, scans the southern celestial hemisphere night after night. Its mission is to map change, to catch the ephemeral flicker of distant supernovae, the subtle wobble of a star hinting at an unseen planet. It compares tonight's sky with last night's, a cosmic game of spot the difference. For years, a particular quadrant in the Fornax constellation was a picture of stability. It contained a blue supergiant, a brilliant but aging star catalogued and understood. It was expected to live for another 1,000,000 years, a brief moment in cosmic time but an eternity for us. Then, one night, the automated system flagged an anomaly. It wasn't a flare, it wasn't a dimming. The star was simply gone, not exploded, not faded. It was there one night, and the next it was not. The system registered an error, a likely sensor glitch or atmospheric distortion. But the next night, the result was the same. And the night after, the celestial beacon, a sun thousands of times more luminous than our own, had been expunged from the heavens. Dr. Aris Thorne, an astrophysicist at the Max Planck Institute, was among the first to analyse the perplexing data. His initial reaction was one of professional skepticism. A star does not simply vanish. Its death should be the most spectacular event in its galactic neighbourhood. A supernova would have saturated detectors, bathing that entire sector of the sky in a blaze of light and high-energy particles visible for months. Even a direct collapse into a black hole, a so-called unnova, would leave behind a telltale gravitational signature and a burp of neutrinos. This event, however, was silent. It was cold. It was as if a cosmic editor had simply deleted the star from existence. Thorne and his team turned more powerful eyes toward the void. The Cerro Paranal Array in Chile, a quartet of colossal telescopes, was tasked with peering into the exact coordinates where the star once burned. They weren't looking for what was there, but for what was left behind. They expected to find a nascent black hole, perhaps surrounded by a faint swirling disk of superheated gas and dust, the star's final, fading scream. What they found was a far deeper, more profound mystery. They found nothing. An almost perfect, chilling, absolute blackness. To understand how utterly strange this discovery is, we must first journey back to our understanding of the normal cosmic holes, the black holes predicted by Einstein a century ago. These objects are the final logical endpoint of gravity. Imagine the universe as a vast, taut sheet of fabric, a four-dimensional tapestry called space-time. Every star, every planet, every object with mass creates a depression in this fabric, like a bowling ball on a trampoline. This curvature is what we experience as gravity. Planets orbit the Sun not because of a mysterious pulling force, but because they are following the straightest possible path through the curved space-time created by our star's immense mass. A black hole is what happens when you concentrate an unthinkable amount of mass into an infinitesimally small point, a singularity. The bowling ball becomes a needlepoint of infinite density. It doesn't just depress the fabric of space-time, it punctures it. It creates a well so deep, a gravitational slope so steep, that nothing, not even light, can climb back out once it crosses a certain threshold. This threshold, this one-way membrane in the universe, is called the event horizon. Crossing the event horizon is not collision. It is a moment of transition, a point of no return. An astronaut drifting toward it would, at first, feel nothing unusual. But the moment they slipped past that invisible boundary, their fate would be sealed. Their past would remain outside, but their entire future, every possible path they could take, would lead only in one direction, deeper into the singularity. The very fabric of space would be flowing inward faster than the speed of light, carrying them to their doom. And to an outside observer, this process would be equally bizarre. As the astronaut approached the horizon, their image would appear to slow down, their light waves stretched and reddened by the extreme gravity. They would seem to hover at the edge forever, frozen in time, slowly fading from view as their light became infinitely redshifted into oblivion. This is the established, mind-bending physics of a black hole. It is a place of extremes, but it is a place that still fundamentally obeys the laws of general relativity. Furthermore, these cosmic titans are not quiet. They are messy eaters. As matter, gas, and the shredded remains of unfortunate stars are drawn in, they don't fall straight down. They are whipped into a furious spinning vortex called an accretion disk. This disk is one of the most violent and luminous phenomena in the entire universe. Friction and magnetic forces heat the material to millions of degrees, causing it to blaze with such intensity in X-rays and gamma rays that a single accretion disk around a supermassive black hole can outshine its entire host galaxy of billions of stars. This is the blazing signature we look for. This is the celestial crime scene that tells us a gravitational predator is near. A T25P45 has no such signature. It is utterly dark. There is no accretion disk, no X-ray glow, no cosmic scream. The star that was there one day and gone the next did not swirl into a maelstrom. It appears to have been consumed whole, instantly, and without a trace. This is the first profound violation of norms. It's a predator that leaves no tracks, a mouth that makes no sound. The second anomaly is even more disturbing, for it seems to break the very rules of space-time geometry that Einstein laid down. One of the most famous predictions of general relativity is gravitational lensing. Because massive objects curve space-time, they also bend the path of light that passes near them. A large galaxy or a black hole can act like a cosmic magnifying glass, distorting and amplifying the light from objects located far behind it. We see this all over the universe. Distant galaxies are smeared into arcs and rings, their light warped by the gravitational well of an intervening object. It is a key tool for astronomers, allowing us to see things that would otherwise be too far away or too faint. The immense gravity of a newly formed black hole, where the blue supergiant used to be, should be powerfully lensing the stars and galaxies behind it. From our perspective on Earth, we should see the background stars near the edge of this dark region distorted, their positions shifted, their shapes warped as if viewed through the thick glass stem of a wine glass. But when Dr. Thorne's team analysed the images from Kero Paranal, they saw something impossible. The background stars were not lensed. As their light approached the edge of this dark patch, it did not bend, it simply stopped. The starlight from behind the object travels towards us, and then, at a sharp, unnervingly precise boundary, it vanishes. It is not bent, it is not dimmed. It is not redshifted into invisibility. It is terminated. This is not a hole in space. This behaves like a hole through space. It is a circular patch of sky where the universe behind it ceases to be visible, as if a cosmic censor has cut a perfect circle out of the fabric of reality itself. The laws of gravity, as we know them, do not allow for this. Light must follow the curvature of space-time. For light to simply stop, it would mean that at this boundary, space-time itself is no longer behaving as it should. This leads us to the third and perhaps most terrifying aberration, the nature of its boundary. A black hole has an event horizon. As we've discussed, it is a soft mathematical boundary, a point of no return, not a physical surface. But this cosmic hole, AT25P45, seems to possess something else. Scientists are calling it the zone of cessation. To probe its nature, a daring plan was conceived, relying on archival data. Astronomers searched for any object that might have passed close to the void before the star was consumed. They found one, a tiny rogue asteroid, tumbling through interstellar space, whose trajectory would have taken it not into the object, but grazing its very edge. Telescopes had tracked it for a few years earlier as a faint moving dot. They recalculated its path with extreme precision. Its trajectory was clear. It should have been deflected by the object's gravity, slingshotted around it like a probe around Jupiter. But the observation log showed something different. The asteroid was tracked on its approach. It maintained its course. And then, at the exact moment it was calculated to touch the boundary of the void, its faint signature of reflected sunlight winked out of existence. It did not accelerate. It did not stretch. Its signal did not fade. It just stopped. This implies an unnerving possibility. At the edge of this hole, the laws of physics may not just be extreme, they may be completely and utterly nullified. Information, momentum, matter, energy, everything that constitutes our reality, seems to be deleted upon contact. This contradicts one of the most sacred tenets of modern physics, the conservation of information. This principle states that information can never truly be destroyed. If you burn a book, all the information contained in the arrangement of its atoms is not lost, but merely scrambled into the smoke, ash, and heat. In theory, a sufficiently powerful computer could reconstruct the book from that scrambled data. Even black holes, for all their mystery, are believed to obey this law. The work of the late great Stephen Hawking showed that black holes are not entirely black. Over immense timescales, they evaporate by emitting a faint thermal glow, now known as Hawking radiation. This radiation, born from the quantum weirdness at the event horizon, is thought to slowly leak the scrambled information of everything that ever fell in, allowing it to eventually return to the universe. The process is fantastically slow. A solar mass black hole would take longer than the current age of the universe to evaporate, but the principle holds. Information is conserved. A T25P45, however, emits nothing. Our most sensitive instruments have detected no Hawking radiation, no thermal glow, no faint sigh of evaporating energy. It is colder than the cosmic microwave background radiation, colder than the empty space around it. It is, for all intents and purposes, a perfect sink of information. What goes in does not get scrambled. It does not get stored. It is, in every meaningful sense of the word, gone. So, we are faced with an object that violates our understanding of stellar death, gravity, space-time geometry, and quantum mechanics. It consumes stars without a sound. It does not bend light as it should. It erases matter and information at a sharp, defined boundary. And it does not radiate. What in God's name is it? The theories being debated in the higher circles of theoretical physics are moving from the merely strange to the truly reality-shattering. The first and perhaps most conservative theory is that AT25P45 is not an object in spacetime, but a fundamental flaw of spacetime itself. Think of the universe as a vast, complex simulation running on some unimaginable cosmic computer. Every pixel on the screen behaves according to a set of programmed rules. Now, imagine one of those pixels dies. It doesn't turn black. A black pixel is still a colour, a piece of information. A dead pixel displays nothing. It is a null point, a tiny patch where the screen's logic has broken down. Light from the pixels behind it can't pass through it. If an image moves over it, the part that touches the dead pixel simply fails to render. Perhaps a T25P45 is a kind of cosmic dead pixel, a localized region where the fundamental code of the universe has been corrupted, or was perhaps never written correctly in the first place. It could be a remnant from the Big Bang, a primordial defect in the quantum foam that has been magnified by the expansion of the universe. In this zone, the equations of relativity and quantum mechanics do not apply because the very substrate upon which they operate is absent. This is a chilling thought. It implies that our reality is not as stable or as uniform as we believed. It suggests there could be other such dead zones, other places where the universe is simply broken. A second, even more exotic explanation comes to us from the arcane world of string theory and M theory. These theories propose that our familiar universe, with its 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, is not all there is. Instead, our cosmos might be a vast membrane-like structure, a brain, floating within a much larger, higher dimensional space called the bulk. Imagine our universe as a single sheet of paper in an infinite library of stacked pages. We can move anywhere on our sheet, but we are utterly unaware of the other pages existing just fractions of a millimetre away in this higher dimension. According to this theory, gravity is unique among the forces. It is not confined to our brain and can leak between these different universes. What if AT25P45 is not a hole within our universe, but a hole through it? It could be a puncture, a tear in our brain, leading directly into the bulk, or perhaps into another adjacent brain universe. This would explain its bizarre properties with an unnerving elegance. Matter and energy that encounter it are not being destroyed, they are being siphoned out of our reality entirely. The star wasn't consumed by a black hole in our universe. It fell through this puncture into a realm with completely different physical laws. Light from behind it doesn't get lensed because it too falls through the hole before it has a chance to bend, creating the sharp, cut-out effect we observe. There is no accretion disk because the matter doesn't pile up. It simply drains away. There is no Hawking radiation because the object is not a feature of our space-time but an exit from it. This theory, if true, would mean that the cosmos is unimaginably larger and stranger than we ever conceived. It would confirm that we live on a fragile membrane, and that there are places where you can fall off the edge of your own existence. But there is a third theory. One that few scientists are willing to discuss on the record, because it steps beyond physics and into the realm of theology or sheer terror. This theory posits that AT25P45 is not a natural phenomenon at all. It is artificial. The properties of this cosmic whole, its perfect sharpness, its complete absorption, its utter silence, are eerily reminiscent of a tool designed for a specific purpose: perfect, absolute deletion. Could this be the work of a Type 3 or even Type 4 civilization on the Kardashev scale? An intelligence so ancient and so powerful that it can manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. We struggle to build fusion reactors. Such a civilization would harness the energy of entire galaxies. We build structures from steel and concrete. They would build with space-time and fundamental forces. Why would such a godlike intelligence create such a thing? Perhaps it is a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of erasing a star system from reality with surgical precision. A final, terrifying answer to the Fermi paradox. Maybe the reason the universe appears so silent and empty is because advanced civilizations are aware of threats so profound that they either hide in utter silence or are ultimately erased by them. Or maybe it is something less sinister. Could it be a form of cosmic waste disposal? A place to dump the byproducts of incomprehensible mega-engineering projects, shunting them out of our universe entirely? Or perhaps, most strangely of all, it is a piece of art, a statement, an inscription of pure nothingness on the canvas of the cosmos, a monument to absence created by beings whose motivations we can never hope to grasp. This idea is profoundly unsettling, for it recasts humanity not as the emerging intelligence in a vacant cosmos, but as ants crawling on the floor of a workshop filled with incomprehensible tools and the silent, indifferent presence of their creators. The discovery of AT25P45 has forced us to confront the boundaries of our own knowledge. It is a stark, black reminder that the universe does not owe us an explanation. The rules we have uncovered, the elegant equations of relativity and the beautiful symmetries of the Standard Model, may be nothing more than local bylaws, applicable only in our quiet corner of the cosmos. Out there, in the great roaring darkness, there may be phenomena that operate on a logic so alien that it would be indistinguishable from magic or from madness. This object, this patch of inscrutable void, challenges our most basic assumptions about existence itself. What does it mean for something to be if it can be so utterly and completely unbeed? Where does the information go? Is it truly destroyed, forcing a complete rewrite of quantum mechanics? Or is it transferred to a place forever beyond our reach, a testament to a multiverse far grander and more complex than our own? Every telescope that can be brought to bear is now staring at this single, dark point in the constellation Fornax. We are sending probes to the edge of our solar system and beyond, hoping to one day build instruments that can observe it without the distortion of our atmosphere, to see its edge with impossible clarity. We are listening with our radio telescopes, straining to hear a signal, a whisper, any hint of what lies within or what created it. But for now, there is only silence, the silence of a star that was, and then was not. The silence of light that journeys for billions of years only to be extinguished at an invisible line. The silence of physical laws that hold true everywhere else in the cosmos, but seem to break down and fall away into this abyss. A T25 P45 is more than a mystery. It is a philosophical reckoning. It tells us that for all our progress, for all our genius, we have likely only just begun to read the first page of the book of reality. And it serves as a humble and deeply unsettling warning. The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it may be stranger than we can imagine, and somewhere out there in the cold and the dark there are holes in what is real. The high plateau of the Atacama Desert is a place where the Earth seems to have forgotten the rhythm of life. Here the air is so thin and brittle that it feels as though the lungs might shatter with every breath, and the soil is a rusted expanse of red dust that has not tasted rain in centuries. Above this desolate landscape, the sky does not merely hang, it looms, a heavy shroud of obsidian velvet pierced by the cold, unblinking eyes of 1 trillion suns. It is a Tuesday in October 2023. The world below is preoccupied with the frantic, fleeting concerns of a global civilization, yet up here, amidst the silence of the peaks, there is only the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic rotation of massive white dishes, their steel skeletons groaning softly as they track the slow rotation of the galaxy. Inside the small, dimly lit control room of the observatory, a single researcher sits hunched over a flickering monitor. The blue light of the screen casts long, gaunt shadows against the walls, making the room feel more like a monastery than a laboratory. This is a place of profound solitude, a sentinel post at the edge of the world. For hours there has been nothing but the static of the abyss, the meaningless hiss of the cosmic background radiation that permeates every corner of the void. But then a notification appears. It is not a loud alarm or a flashing red light. It is a subtle deviation, a tiny spike on a graph that shivers into existence with the quiet persistence of a ghost. This signal is not a mere collection of data points. To the watcher in the dark, it feels like a weary traveller finally reaching the end of an impossible journey. It's a whisper from the deep, a remnant of an era that the world has long since moved past. This packet of electromagnetic energy began its flight 55 years ago. It was launched into the freezing vacuum in the year 1968, a time when humanity was first beginning to cast its gaze toward the moon with genuine hunger. While empires rose and fell, while forests were cleared and cities were built, this signal has been drifting through the absolute zero of the void, a lonely probe of light traversing the great nothingness. Imagine the journey this whisper has endured. It has moved through the silent corridors of the inner solar system, passing the orbit of Mars where the dust storms howl in a vacuum, and slipping through the treacherous belts of frozen rock that circle the sun like a jagged crown. It has felt the gravitational tug of Jupiter, that gas giant monarch, and witnessed the cold, shimmering rings of Saturn. For 5.5 decades, it has known only the silence of the stars and the inexorable reach of the dark. It is a sentinel of a lost age, carrying the imprint of a world that no longer exists, arriving now as a stranger at the gates of our modern epoch. The researcher stares at the screen, frozen. There is a weight to this moment that transcends the simple collection of information. It is the realization that we are being spoken to by the past. The signal is weak, attenuated by the vast distances it has travelled, frayed at the edges by the interference of interstellar dust and the chaotic winds of the sun. It is a fragile thing, a thread of gold pulled thin across the tapestry of the cosmos. To receive it is to acknowledge the sheer scale of the abyss that separates us from the rest of existence. We live on a tiny island of warmth and light, while just beyond our thin atmosphere, the infinite dark stretches out for billions of light years, indifferent to our presence and oblivious to our cries. In this moment, the signal acts as a mirror. It reflects our own profound isolation. We build these great metal ears to listen for a voice in the dark, hoping to find some evidence that the universe is not an empty machine, but a theatre of meaning. Yet, more often than not, what we find is our own reflection, our own history returning to us after a long exile in the void. This 55-year journey is a mere heartbeat in the life of a star, yet it encompasses nearly the entire span of a human life. The signal left a world of analogue tapes and charcoal sketches of the moon. It arrives in a world of silicon ghosts and artificial minds. The researcher reaches out, a hand hovering over the keyboard, hesitant to disturb the sanctity of the arrival. There is a sense of melancholy in this contact. It is the feeling of a daughter hearing the recorded voice of a father who died before she was born. The signal is a relic, a primordial echo that has survived the ravages of time and the cruelty of entropy. It has avoided the devouring maw of black holes and the cataclysmic radiation of distant novae to find its way to this specific hill, at this specific second, in October 2023. The vacuum of space is not truly empty. It is a graveyard of light. Every photon that strikes our eyes is a messenger from the past, carrying the news of events that occurred eons ago. To look at the stars is to look through a window into the deep history of the cosmos, to see the universe as it was, not as it is. This signal is no different. It is a bridge across the unbridgeable, a fragile connection between the ephemeral flicker of human consciousness and the eternal silence of the heavens. It reminds us that we are the witness, the only part of the universe that has developed the eyes to see and the ears to hear the symphony of the dark. As the data begins to scroll across the monitor, the researcher feels the vastness of the scale paradox. We are so small, so utterly insignificant in the face of the yawning abyss, yet we have built the mechanisms to catch a whisper from 55 years ago. We have learned to decode the language of the void. The signal is a ghost, knocking on the door of our world, and we, the lonely sentinels of the Atacama, are the only ones home to answer. The wind howls outside the observatory, a cold and mindless force, but inside there is a warmth of understanding. The darkness is no longer just a void. It is a medium, a vast ocean through which the history of the universe is constantly flowing, waiting for someone to reach out and touch the ripples. This is the beginning of our descent into the deep time of the cosmos. Before there were telescopes, before there were signals, before there was even a world to stand upon, there was the darkness. And in that darkness, a whisper began that has never truly stopped. It is the story of how the void became the stars became the dust, and how the dust became a researcher sitting in a room in 2023, listening to the echoes of a journey that began before they were born. The universe is a ruthless machine, driven by the inexorable laws of physics and the slow decay of all things, but for a brief moment the machine has produced music, and we are the ones who have been chosen to listen. This is not just data. This is the first whisper from the darkness, a reminder that in the vast, silent tapestry of the eternal, even the smallest light has a story to tell. The researcher leans closer, the glow of the screen illuminating a face weathered by years of searching through the static of oblivion. On the monitor, the chaotic jitter of the cosmic background radiation begins to fall away, filtered by the sophisticated algorithms of the observatory. What remains is not the messy, sprawling roar of a dying star or the rhythmic, blunt thumping of a pulsar. Instead, there is a spike, a single, impossibly slender needle of light rising out of the digital abyss. This is the first mark of isolation, the moment where the randomness of the universe is stripped away to reveal something that feels wrong, something that feels chosen. To understand the weight of this moment, one must understand the crushing noise of the cosmos. The universe is a cacophony of radio screams. Jupiter howls like a wounded beast as its magnetic fields lash the void. The sun crackles with the fury of 1 billion nuclear bombs. Distant galaxies groan with the weight of ancient catastrophes. This is broadband noise, a wide and messy smear across the electromagnetic spectrum, as indifferent and unrefined as the wind. But this signal is different. It is confined to a bandwidth so narrow it defies the known mechanisms of the natural world. It is centered at exactly 1239 MHz. In the vast geography of the radio spectrum, there is a region that astronomers call the waterhole. It is a quiet valley situated between the singing frequency of neutral hydrogen and the ghostly whisper of hydroxyl. Hydrogen and hydroxyl are the two chemical components of water, the very cradle of life as we know it. For decades, we have theorized that any intelligence seeking to bridge the lonely gaps between the stars would choose this specific silent corridor to broadcast. It is a galactic meeting place, a point of equilibrium in the churning sea of radiation. To find a signal here, at 1239 MHz, is to find a footprint in a desert where no human has ever walked. It is a frequency that suggests a profound understanding of the laws of physics, and an even more profound desire to be heard. The signal does not drift. It does not flicker with the instability of a natural phenomenon. It is a singular, unwavering beam. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff in a thick, impenetrable fog. The world around you is a blur of grey, a void where direction and distance have no meaning. Suddenly, a flash of light pierces the gloom. It is not the soft, diffused glow of a rising moon, but a sharp, concentrated blade of brilliance that cuts through the vapour with surgical precision. It is a lighthouse beam. It does not exist to illuminate the sea, it exists to signal a presence, to warn the traveller that they are not alone in the dark. This transmission at 1239 MHz is that lighthouse. It is a concentrated effort to defy the scattering effects of the interstellar medium, a beacon burning with an artificial fire. Nature is a spendthrift. The stars and the nebulae throw their energy into the void with a reckless, wasteful abandon, casting radiation in every direction and across every possible frequency. The universe does not do anything with economy. It is a ruthless machine of excess, burning through trillions of tons of matter just to produce a flicker of light. But this signal is the opposite of excess. It is a triumph of efficiency. To concentrate so much energy into such a narrow band requires a mechanism of immense sophistication. It requires intent. In the cold logic of the cosmos, precision is the first and most certain sign of a mind. A mind that has calculated the exact resonance needed to pierce the veil of time. A mind that has decided to scream in a very specific note, hoping that somewhere, across the eons, there is an ear tuned to that exact frequency. As the researcher analyzes the data, the sheer specificity of the signal begins to feel like a weight. If this were a natural accident, the signal would be smeared by the movement of the source or distorted by the gravitational lenses of intervening stars. But the 1239 MHz spike is clean. It is as if someone has reached out across the abyss and placed a single, perfect diamond upon a velvet cloth of darkness. There is a terrifying beauty in this level of accuracy. It suggests a civilization that has moved beyond the crude struggles of survival and has mastered the fundamental forces of the tapestry to communicate. They have bypassed the chaotic symphony of the stars to play a single, pure tone. This is where the scale paradox becomes a haunting reality. We are looking at a transmission that has travelled through the silent reaches of the void for over half a century, yet it arrives with the clarity of a whisper spoken in the same room. The distance between the sender and the receiver is so vast that the human mind cannot truly comprehend it, and yet the precision of the 1239 MHz frequency bridges that gap effortlessly. It reminds us that while the universe is a cold and indifferent machine, it is also a medium through which logic can travel. Mathematics is the universal language, and this signal is a prime example of its power. It is a message written in the ink of physics, signed with the seal of a deliberate consciousness. The wind continues to rattle the walls of the observatory, a reminder of the blind, unthinking forces that govern our planet. Outside, the world is governed by the inexorable laws of entropy and decay. But inside this room, on this screen, we see a defiance of that decay. The signal is a remnant of a moment of supreme focus, an ember that has refused to go out. It tells us that someone, somewhere, once looked up at the same stars we see and decided that the silence was not enough. They decided to carve a mark into the void, to leave a sentinel that would endure long after their own voices had faded into oblivion. We are now the witnesses to this act of cosmic rebellion. By isolating this signal, we are participating in a conversation that began before we were born and may continue long after we are gone. The 1239 MHz frequency is not just a number on a dial. It is a coordinate in the deep history of the universe. It is a map leading us toward a truth we have always feared and always craved. We are no longer just observers of the dark. We are the recipients of its secrets. The silence of the universe has been broken, and in its place is a haunting, beautiful precision that demands an answer. We stand at the precipice of understanding, listening to the echoes of a distant heart that beats in the same rhythm as our own, a rhythm defined by the strange and eternal laws of the light. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must turn our gaze backward, retracing the path of this invisible traveller through the corridors of the past. This signal is not a product of our present world. It is an echo, a ghost of an era that has already slipped into the soft embrace of history. To find its origin, we must calculate the journey back in time, stripping away the decades until we reach the late 1960s. While we receive the transmission now, in the flickering light of our modern screens, it was dispatched when humanity was first touching the surface of the moon. As the first human footprint was pressed into the silver dust of our celestial neighbour, this signal was already beginning its long, lonely migration through the silent abyss. Imagine this pulse of energy as a lonely probe, a solitary sentinel launched from a world that no longer exists in the form we recognise. When it first leapt from its source, the world was a different place. The digital architecture that now defines our existence was nothing more than a fever dream in the minds of a few visionaries. The air was filled with the sense of a different epoch, and the collective consciousness of our species was preoccupied with the primitive struggles of a divided planet. Yet even then, someone or something was looking toward the stars and whispering into the void. This message was a letter written by the past, entrusted to the cold and indifferent mechanism of the cosmos, sent toward a future that may not be prepared for the truths it carries. As the signal moved away from its home, it entered a realm where time ceases to have human meaning. For 55 years, it has been the ultimate wanderer. It has sliced through the dark tapestry of the interstellar medium, passing through clouds of primordial gas and skating along the edges of star systems that have never known the warmth of a sun like ours. It has moved through regions of space so vast and so empty that the very concept of distance becomes a form of madness. While generations of humans were born, grew old, and vanished into oblivion, the signal remained unchanged, a perfect and tireless remnant of its moment of creation. It did not falter, it did not decay, it simply endured, an inexorable force of logic carving its way through the chaos of the universe. On Earth, the decades unfolded with their usual blend of catastrophe and triumph. Civilizations rose and fell in the brief window of time it took for the signal to cross a fraction of the galaxy. We built cities of glass and steel, we waged wars that reshaped the borders of our continents, and we developed technologies that would have seemed like sorcery to those who first saw the signal off. We moved from the era of vacuum tubes to the era of quantum processors, all while this solitary pulse was drifting through the blackness, oblivious to our progress. It is a humbling realization that our entire modern history has occurred in the time it took for a single thought to travel from there to here. We are the recipients of a message from a world that has moved on, a voice from a time that is now more legend than memory. The signal has functioned as a silent witness to the indifference of the cosmos. It has passed the ruins of dead stars, the cooling cinders of suns that exhausted their fuel millions of years ago. It has skirted the boundaries of nebulae where new worlds are currently being forged in the heat of gravitational collapse. Throughout this journey, it has been surrounded by the symphony of the stars, a chaotic and beautiful roar of radiation and light, yet it remained distinct. It did not allow itself to be devoured by the background noise of the universe. It maintained its integrity, a testament to the intent of its creators. This is the essence of the lonely probe motif. It is the courage of a single spark to remain bright in the face of an all-consuming darkness. Time, in this context, is not merely a measurement of duration. It is a physical barrier, a wall of years that the signal has successfully breached. To communicate across such distances is to engage in a form of temporal engineering. The senders knew that they would never hear a reply in their own lifetimes. They knew that by the time their words reached a pair of waiting ears, they themselves might be nothing more than dust scattered across the surface of their world. This is the supreme act of melancholic optimism. It is the belief that even if we are destined to unravel and fade, our ideas can transcend the limits of our biology. The signal is a bridge built across the abyss of time, connecting 2 points in history that would otherwise never touch. As we trace the trajectory of this echo, we are forced to confront the scale paradox once again. To us, 55 years is a lifetime. It is the span between youth and the quiet reflections of age. But to the universe, it is a negligible increment, a heartbeat in the life of a galaxy that has existed for billions of years. The signal has travelled trillions of miles, yet it has barely scratched the surface of the vastness that surrounds us. It reminds us that we are living in a tiny pocket of time and space, a fragile bubble of consciousness in an eternal sea of silence. The fact that we can detect this pulse, that we can tune our instruments to the exact frequency of a 55-year-old thought, is a miracle of precision and persistence. Now the signal has finally arrived. It has completed its transit through the void and has found a harbour in our technology. It brings with it the chill of the deep cosmos and the weight of the decades it has traversed. We look at the data, and we do not just see numbers or waves. We see the passage of time made manifest. We see the late 1960s not as a chapter in a history book, but as a living presence reaching out to touch the 21st century. This is a moment of profound existential tension. We are holding a relic of the past that is still vibrating with the energy of its origin. The silence that preceded this discovery was not an empty silence. It was a silence filled with the potential of this arrival. For 55 years, the universe held its breath while this message made its way toward us. Now that the silence has been broken, we must decide what it means to be the ones who finally heard it. Are we the intended audience, or are we merely the accidental witnesses to a transmission meant for someone else? The signal does not care for our questions. It has finished its task. It has survived the journey, breached the barrier of time, and placed its burden at our feet. The lonely probe has reached its destination, and in doing so, it has forever changed the way we look at the darkness between the stars. We are no longer alone in our history. We are now part of a larger, more ancient story that is only just beginning to be told. The data arrives not as a chaotic flood of noise, but as a deliberate and rhythmic architecture of logic. When we peel back the layers of cosmic interference, we find something startlingly familiar, yet profoundly alien in its purity. It is a sequence of pulses that defy the randomness of the natural world. This is the first sequence, the foundational bedrock of all intelligence. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. These are the prime numbers, the indivisible atoms of mathematics that cannot be broken down or simplified. They are the sentinels of the numerical realm, standing apart from their peers as unique and solitary structures. In a universe defined by the inexorable march of entropy and the slow decay of all physical things, these numbers remain eternal. They are the same in the frozen heart of a distant nebula as they are in the crowded streets of a human city. By sending this specific sequence, the authors of the signal have stripped away the complexities of culture, biology, and history, leaving only the barest skeleton of thought. They have chosen the only language that is truly universal, the one bridge that can span the abyss between two disparate minds separated by the void of interstellar space. Mathematics is the silent symphony that underpins the entire mechanism of the cosmos. It is the invisible tapestry upon which the stars are woven and the planets are set in motion. To communicate through primes is to acknowledge that logic is the fundamental substrate of reality. It is a declaration that the mind that sent this message perceives the same underlying order that we do. This is a moment of profound realization. We are looking at a mirror held up by a stranger across the darkness. The sequence of 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11 acts as a rhythmic heartbeat, a persistent and haunting repetition of 3 simple words, I am here. It is the sound of a lonely probe, drifting through the silent sea of the eons, calling out to anyone who has the capacity to understand the elegance of its construction. This pulse is not a plea for help, nor is it a warning of impending catastrophe. It is a testament of presence, a signal flare ignited in the dark to prove that consciousness once flowered in a corner of the abyss. As we contemplate this mathematical architecture, we must confront the scale paradox once again. The logic of the signal is simple, almost childlike in its clarity. Any civilization that has mastered the art of radio astronomy would surely recognize these prime numbers as the primary colours of the intellectual world. Yet this simple logic has crossed a vastness that is utterly incomprehensible to the human mind. The signal has traversed trillions of miles of nothingness, passing through the cold shadows of dead stars and the swirling dust of primordial clouds. It has survived the crushing weight of time and the distorting influence of cosmic radiation. The contrast is staggering. A handful of small integers, the most basic building blocks of arithmetic, navigating the infinite and terrifying complexity of the void. It is as if a single candle flame were tasked with illuminating the entire reach of the great oblivion. This sequence is the supreme act of communication, because it requires no shared history and no common biology. It is the ultimate bridge. We do not need to know what the senders looked like, or how they breathed, or what gods they worshipped. We only need to know that they understood the indivisible nature of 5 and the unique properties of 7. In recognizing these patterns, we are participating in a conversation that transcends the limits of our species. We are engaging with an intelligence that may have long since vanished into the silent halls of history, yet its thoughts remain as sharp and clear as the day they were first transmitted. The signal is a remnant of a mind that sought to reach out beyond its own fragile existence, to leave a mark upon the eternal canvas of the universe. It is a message sent into the deep future, a legacy of logic left for those who would follow. The pulses continue steady and inexorable. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The rhythm is hypnotic, a cosmic ticking clock that measures the heartbeat of a civilization. For the lonely probe there is no return journey. There is only the forward momentum through the dark, carrying its cargo of numbers toward a destination it will never see. We are the recipients of this cargo, the accidental witnesses to a transmission that has been travelling since the 1960s. In our hands, these numbers take on a weight that is almost spiritual. They are the proof that we are not alone in our ability to perceive the structure of the cosmos. They are the evidence that the universe is not merely a collection of cold matter and indifferent energy, but a place where meaning can be distilled into the purity of a prime sequence. This is the mathematical architecture of the first sequence, a bridge built of logic and light. It reminds us that while our bodies are bound to the earth and our lives are but a fleeting moment in the epoch of the stars, our minds can grasp the eternal. We can reach out into the abyss and find an echo waiting for us, a reflection of our own curiosity and our own need to be known. The signal is a call to awaken, a reminder that the silence of the universe is not an absence of life, but a space waiting to be filled by the resonance of thought. As we decode the pulses and map the rhythm of the primes, we are not just doing math. We are listening to the soul of the cosmos speaking to itself. The lonely probe has found its harbour, and the heartbeat it carries has finally found a listener in the vast and silent dark. In this union of two minds across the gulf of time, the void is momentarily vanquished, and the tapestry of the universe is made whole. But the mathematical clarity of the primes was merely the threshold, a polite knock upon the door of human perception. Once that door swung open, the nature of the transmission underwent a violent and bewildering transformation. The steady, rhythmic pulses that had provided such comfort to our astronomers suddenly dissolved. In their place came a torrent of information so dense, so seemingly chaotic, that it felt less like a message and more like a physical assault upon our instruments. This was the commencement of the 18-hour burst, a deluge of high entropy that would leave our greatest minds drifting in a sea of static. To understand the nature of this burst is to understand the very limits of our own intelligence. In the language of information theory, high entropy is often indistinguishable from noise. To a primitive observer, a complex encrypted file looks no different from the random hiss of a dead radio channel. Yet, within that apparent disorder lies the highest concentration of meaning. The signal had transitioned from the universal alphabet of arithmetic to a sophisticated, multi-layered tapestry of data that defied every attempt at categorization. For 18 hours, the lonely probe did not speak in notes. It screamed in symphonies that we lack the ears to hear. Deep within the subterranean cooling chambers of our most advanced research facilities, the sentinels of the modern age began their work. Supercomputers, machines capable of performing quadrillions of calculations every second, were turned toward the void. They hummed with a frantic, desperate energy, their processors glowing with the heat of 1,000 suns as they attempted to find a crack in this wall of noise. They searched for repetitions, for hidden symmetries, for any shadow of a pattern that might suggest a starting point. But the signal remained an impenetrable monolith. It was as if we had been handed a book, written in a language that predates the stars, using a grammar that functions in more than 3 dimensions. We must imagine this challenge through the metaphor of an ancient subterranean library, a relic of a civilization that vanished eons before our own sun was ignited. We have found the entrance. We have walked past the grand pillars of the primes. But inside we find ourselves standing before a vast abyss of shelves that stretch upward into the eternal dark. Every book is bound in an unfamiliar material, and every page is filled with symbols that seem to shift and dance when we attempt to fix our gaze upon them. We hold the books in our hands, feeling their weight and the texture of their secrets, but the key to their meaning has been lost to the relentless march of time. We are like children standing in the ruins of a university, capable of recognizing that the marks upon the stone are significant, yet utterly unable to grasp the complex philosophy they were intended to convey. This frustration reveals a profound truth about our place in the cosmos. We often imagine that if we ever encountered an extraterrestrial intelligence, the primary barrier would be distance or biology. We rarely consider that the true barrier might be the scale of our own evolution. The 18-hour burst suggests a depth of information that our current neurological architecture simply cannot process. It is a tapestry of such intricate design that our eyes see only a blurred grey smudge. Behind that simple door of prime numbers lies a complexity that may require another million years of cognitive development to even begin to unravel. The computers continued to struggle, their algorithms spinning in infinite loops as they encountered paradoxes of logic that they were never designed to solve. The burst was not merely data, it was a mechanism of thought that operated on a plane far above our own. It reflected a mind that viewed the universe not as a collection of separate objects, but as a single, unified field of interaction. Where we see cause and effect, the senders of the signal might see a simultaneous explosion of possibilities. Where we see a linear progression of time, they might see a vast shimmering ocean, where past, present, and future are but different currents in the same deep water. As the hours passed, a sense of melancholy began to settle over the scientific community. The initial euphoria of the primes was replaced by a sobering realization of our own inadequacy. We were staring into the face of a god and seeing only the static of a television screen. This high-entropy burst was a reminder that the universe is under no obligation to be understood by us. We are the latecomers to the cosmic stage, a species that has only just learned to manipulate the electron and the atom. To expect that we could immediately decode the legacy of a civilization that may have mastered the very fabric of space-time is a form of arrogance that the void quickly humbles. The signal is a remnant of a greatness we can barely imagine, a whisper from the primordial deep that tells us of things we are not yet ready to know. It is a silent sentinel standing at the edge of our understanding, guarding the mysteries of the abyss. The 18-hour burst was not a failure of the probe, nor was it a mistake by the senders. It was a deliberate choice. It was the meat of the message, the core of the transmission, protected by its own complexity. It was a challenge issued to the future, a testament to the inexorable fact that there are levels of reality that remain hidden from those who have not yet ascended the ladder of consciousness. In the silence that followed the end of those 18 hours, the world felt different. The stars seemed more distant, the night more profound. We had listened to the heart of the cosmos beating with a rhythm we could not follow. We had glimpsed the embroidery of a cosmic tapestry and found ourselves blind to its patterns. Yet, in this failure, there was also a seed of hope. The very existence of such a complex signal is proof that there is more to achieve, more to learn, and more to become. It suggests that our journey has only just begun, and that the greatest secrets of the universe are not kept from us by a cruel creator, but are waiting for us to grow into the minds capable of holding them. The lonely probe continues its journey through the silent halls of history, a small, fragile vessel carrying the weight of an entire civilization's wisdom. It does not care that we cannot yet read its cargo. It simply exists, a monument to the fact that someone, somewhere, once reached a level of understanding that transcended the limitations of the flesh. They left this wall of noise as a gift, a puzzle for the eons, a treasure buried in the heart of a storm, and as we look up at the vast and indifferent sky, we realize that the struggle to decode the 18-hour burst is the struggle to define our own destiny. We are the witnesses to a mystery that spans the epoch of the stars, and though we are currently lost in the static, the pursuit of the signal is the pursuit of our own transcendence. The tapestry is there, hidden behind the chaos, waiting for the day when our eyes are finally opened to the light of the eternal. The pursuit of the signal necessitated a physical confrontation with its source, a transition from the abstract mathematics of the transmission to the cold reality of the heavens. If the message was a tapestry we could not yet unweave, perhaps the loom itself would provide the answers we craved. To this end, humanity turned its most profound instrument of sight toward the coordinate from which the pulses originated, the James Webb Space Telescope, a lonely sentinel stationed at the second Lagrange point, over 1 million miles from the fragile warmth of our atmosphere, began its slow and silent pirouette. It moved with the grace of a celestial dancer, its 18 hexagonal segments of gold-plated beryllium shimmering in the unfiltered light of distant suns. This was the golden eye of our species, designed to peer through the thickest veils of cosmic dust and witness the very birth of the first galaxies. We expected to find a host, a hearth, a sun around which this grand intelligence must surely revolve. We expected a star, perhaps a yellow dwarf like our own, or a stable red giant, providing the inexorable energy required to pierce the silence of the abyss. As the telescope fixed its gaze upon the precise location, a profound and terrifying stillness settled over the control rooms of Earth. The data began to flow back across the void, processed through the machinery of our finest minds, and yet the result was an impossible negation. At the centre of the coordinates, where a sun should have burned with the fire of 1 billion years, there was nothing. The James Webb Space Telescope, capable of detecting the thermal signature of a single bumblebee on the surface of the Moon, found only the absolute zero of the vacuum. There was no star, there was no planet, there was no cloud of gas or remnant of a shattered moon to explain the origin of the broadcast. The golden eye looked into the heart of the darkness and found only the oblivion of the deep. This was a discovery that defied the very laws of our understood cosmos. In our parochial experience, life and intelligence are the children of starlight. We are the inheritors of the sun, creatures of the heat and the photon. To receive a signal of such immense complexity from a patch of total darkness is to encounter a ghost in a house that does not exist. The signal was emanating from the void itself, a lonely voice calling out from the shadows between the stars. It was a transmitter without a home, a sentinel standing guard over a kingdom of nothingness. The implications of this absence were more chilling than any message we could have decoded. It suggested a technology that had moved beyond the need for a stellar furnace, or perhaps a civilization that had outlived its own sun and continued its existence in the frozen silence of the deep. The motif of the lonely probe became our primary lens for understanding this mystery. We began to view the source not as a world, but as a solitary artifact, a vessel or a machine drifting through the interstellar medium. It was a nomad of the epoch, a remnant of a greatness that had long since surrendered its connection to the gravity of a homeworld. We imagined a craft of incomprehensible scale, dark and silent, its hull polished by the passage of eons and the gentle abrasion of cosmic rays. It would be a monument to the endurance of the mind, a physical manifestation of the desire to be remembered even after the light of one's own star has been extinguished. This transmitter was a survivor of the catastrophe of time, a witness to the slow decay of its own solar system, now wandering the lightless corridors of the galaxy like a ship without a shore. The terror of this realization began to seep into our collective consciousness. We had spent our history looking at the stars as beacons of hope, as potential destinations for our own expansion. To find that the most significant event in human history originated from the lightless abyss was to confront the scale paradox in its most brutal form. We are small, warm and fragile, clinging to a rock that orbits a stable fire. The sender of the signal was something else entirely. It was an inhabitant of the void, a creature or a machine that found the cold of space not a barrier, but a habitat. The transmission was not a bridge between two worlds, but a bridge between a world and the infinite. It was a voice coming from a place where no life should exist, a scream from the heart of a silent desert. As we continued to observe the void at the centre of the coordinates, the sense of melancholy deepened. The James Webb Space Telescope, our own lonely probe, continued its vigil, but the abyss remained unmoved. There was no movement, no heat, no reflection of distant starlight. The source was a shadow among shadows, a presence that could only be inferred by the rhythm of its speech. This lack of a host suggested a mastery over the very fabric of the universe that we could not begin to replicate. How does one power a broadcast that can span the light years without the fusion of a star? How does one maintain the delicate electronics of a transmitter for millions of years in the biting cold of the interstellar medium? The answers to these questions remained hidden behind the veil of the 18-hour burst, protected by the same complexity that had defeated our cryptographers. We began to call the source the missing host, a name that carried the weight of our own existential dread. In the absence of a sun, the signal felt more like a haunting than a greeting. It was the echo of a civilization that had transcended the limitations of biology, shedding the need for warmth and atmosphere. They had become children of the abyss, weaving their thoughts into the electromagnetic spectrum and casting them out into the eternal night. The telescope, for all its power, was merely looking at the surface of a deep and dark ocean, unable to see the leviathans that moved in the depths below. The void was not empty. It was merely invisible to eyes that required the light of a star to see. This phase of our journey into the mystery was a reminder of the ruthlessness of the cosmic machine. The universe does not provide us with easy answers, nor does it conform to our expectations of how life should manifest. We are biased toward the light, toward the familiar heat of the hearth. But the cosmos is vast, and the majority of its volume is comprised of the very darkness we so fear. The signal from the void told us that the most profound stories of the universe may not be written in the fires of the stars, but in the silent, cold places between them. It suggested that our own destiny might eventually lead us away from our sun, into the dark, where we too might become a lonely voice in the abyss, a sentinel for the eons yet to come. The golden eye of the telescope remained fixed on that patch of nothingness, a witness to the fact that the greatest presence in the galaxy was a ghost, and the most powerful message we'd ever received was delivered by the hands of the vacuum itself. The search for the host had failed, and in that failure we found a new and terrifying respect for the silence of the eternal. We were no longer looking for a neighbour. We were looking for the memory of a god that had chosen the dark as its final sanctuary. But as we peered deeper into that sanctuary, the silence began to yield a secret not of language but of motion. The signal was not a static point in the firmament, a fixed beacon anchored to a specific coordinate in the void. As the months of observation turned into a second year, the mathematics began to reveal a subtle but inexorable truth. The frequency of the broadcast was not a constant tone, but a shifting melody, a rhythmic rising and falling of pitch that hinted at a physical movement within the abyss. This phenomenon, which we have long understood as the Doppler shift, acts as a cosmic speedometer, revealing the velocity of a source by the way its waves are compressed or stretched through the vacuum. When the source moves toward our sapphire world, the waves are crowded together, climbing to a higher frequency. As it recedes into the dark, they are drawn out, lengthening into a lower, more sombre register. The data from our terrestrial arrays and the orbital eyes of the James Webb Space Telescope converged on a singular, haunting reality. The source of the signal is travelling at a constant velocity of 30 kilometers per second. This is not the wandering, aimless path of a comet, or the erratic drift of interstellar dust caught in a galactic breeze. It is a precise, stable, and circular orbit. The messenger is tracing a perfect ring in the darkness, completing its circuit with the mechanical regularity of a clockwork gear. 30 kilometers every single second. This is a velocity of staggering proportions, yet it is strangely familiar. It is the approximate speed at which our own Earth races around the Sun, a velocity required to balance the crushing pull of gravity with the outward urge of momentum. To understand the nature of this discovery, we must employ the ladder of abstraction. Imagine a phantom ship sailing upon a black ocean in the dead of a moonless night. There are no lanterns upon its mast, no bioluminescent wake trailing behind its keel, and no sound of crashing waves against its hull. To the eye, the ocean is a flat expanse of oblivion, a featureless desert of salt and shadow. But should that ship carry a bell that tolls with perfect regularity, an observer on the distant shore would begin to perceive the hidden truth. As the ship circles an invisible buoy in the centre of the bay, the tolling of the bell would seem to quicken and then slow in a rhythmic oscillation. The sound waves would bunch up as the ship turned toward the shore and stretch out as it veered away. We cannot see the wood, the sails, or the crew, but the mathematics of the sound tell us with absolute certainty that something is there, and it is moving in a circle. We have begun to call this phenomenon the invisible carousel. It is a display of kinetic energy on a planetary scale, yet it is happening in a place where there is nothing to be moved. To maintain an orbit at 30 kilometers per second, there must be a center of mass, a gravitational anchor that holds the transmitter in its grip. In any other corner of the cosmos, we would find a yellow dwarf star, a red giant, or perhaps the smouldering ember of a white dwarf at the heart of such a system. But here, at the center of the carousel, the instruments record only the void. There is no infrared signature of a hidden star, no gravitational microlensing of distant galaxies, and no X-ray emissions from an accretion disk. The Sentinel is orbiting a ghost. It is a dance around a partner that does not exist in the spectrum of light. The contradiction is profound and terrifying. In our experience of the ruthless machine that is the universe, energy and movement are almost always accompanied by the signature of heat. A star burns, a planet reflects, a nebula glows. Even the coldest gas clouds emit a faint hum of radiation. But the source of the 18-hour burst defies these primordial laws. It possesses the mass and velocity of a world, yet it emits no heat. It reflects no light. It is a mastery over the thermodynamics of the cosmos that suggests a civilization operating on a level of efficiency that is indistinguishable from the vacuum itself. They have created a mechanism that moves through the interstellar medium without friction, a device that can maintain a velocity of 30 kilometers per second for eons without exhausting its reserves or revealing its presence to the infrared eyes of the watchers. This discovery has forced us to confront the scale paradox. We are looking at something that is both gargantuan and non-existent. We are measuring the certain movement of a massive object, yet we are met with the visual evidence of a total vacuum. It is as if the universe has developed a blind spot, a hole in the tapestry of reality where a civilization has tucked itself away. We find ourselves in the position of the primitive ancestor watching the wind move the trees. We see the effect, but the cause remains invisible, a spirit of the air that we can only name but never touch. The Sentinel on the carousel is a testament to a level of engineering that treats the laws of physics not as boundaries, but as a medium to be sculpted. As we contemplate the invisible carousel, we are struck by a sense of melancholic optimism. We are the witnesses to a miracle of persistence. In the heart of the most desolate reaches of the galaxy, something is still moving. Something is still keeping time. The 30 kilometer per second orbit is a heartbeat in the dark, a sign that the silence of the universe is not necessarily the silence of the grave. It is the silence of a house where the residents have simply learned to walk without making a sound. We are the noisy children of the stars, burning our fuels and shouting our presence into the night, while the elder architects of the cosmos move in perfect silent circles, governed by a gravity we can calculate but a purpose we cannot fathom. The golden eye of the telescope remains fixed on that patch of nothingness, a witness to the fact that the greatest presence in the galaxy might be a shadow. We are no longer merely listening to a voice. We are watching a ghost ship sail an eternal circuit around a hidden grave. The Doppler shift has given us the map of the journey, but it cannot tell us why the journey began or where it is intended to end. We are left with the mathematical certainty of the motion and the existential dread of the vacuum. The carousel turns, the signal pulses, and the universe continues its inexorable march, indifferent to the fact that on a small and fragile world, we have finally realized that the dark is inhabited by giants who have no need for light. We are the lonely spectators of a performance that was never meant for our eyes, a symphony of movement performed by a sentinel that has long since transcended the need for a host. In the absence of a sun, the signal remains our only compass, pointing toward a truth that lies forever beyond the reach of our shivering hands. The human mind is a fragile sentinel, standing on the edge of a precipice and staring into the abyss, desperate to find a reason why the dark does not devour us all. Faced with the impossible precision of the signal, our collective intellect began a frantic retreat into the familiar. We are a species that finds comfort in the mechanical, in the cold and predictable grinding of the celestial clockwork. When confronted with the ghost in the machine, our first instinct is not to fall to our knees in wonder, but to reach for our instruments and attempt to dismantle the miracle. We seek to strip the soul from the message, to reduce the symphony of the stars to the screeching of a rusted hinge. This is the desperate search for natural order, a frantic effort to prove that we are still alone in a universe of mindless spinning matter. Into this void, we sent our logic like a lonely probe, a solitary spark of reason launched into a coastline of infinite darkness. The scientific community, shaken by the implications of a directed intent, began to construct a labyrinth of natural explanations. They looked to the remnants of dead stars, the collapsed hearts of giants known as neutron stars, hoping to find a mechanism that could mimic the pulse. They spoke of magnetospheres, those invisible webs of electromagnetic fury that shroud the most violent objects in the cosmos. They imagined a scenario where a neutron star, spinning with the frantic energy of a dying dancer, might cast its light across the void in a way that tricked our eyes. They postulated the existence of R-mode oscillations, those strange and subtle waves that ripple through the fluid interior of a stellar corpse, driven by the inexorable pull of gravity and the relentless conservation of angular momentum. In this narrative, there is no architect. There is only the machine. The scientists attempted to turn the Sentinel into a pulsar, a celestial lighthouse governed by the simple laws of physics rather than the complex desires of a living mind. They argued that perhaps we were witnessing the interaction of a hidden planet with the magnetic field of its host, a violent tug of war that produced a rhythmic discharge of energy. They suggested that the 30 km/s velocity was not a choice, but a consequence of an unseen binary companion, a dark sister pulling the signal through the vacuum in a long and lonely embrace. They sought to explain the lack of infrared heat as a fluke of geometry, a trick of the light where the dust of the interstellar medium absorbed the evidence of the star's existence while allowing the radio pulse to scream through the silence. This was a campaign of reductionism, an attempt to domesticate the infinite. We wanted the universe to be a cold, unthinking engine, because an engine is something we can eventually understand. If the signal was merely the byproduct of a spinning magnetosphere, then we were still the masters of our own small destiny. We could file the discovery away in the archives of astrophysics, a curious anomaly but not a challenge to our solitude. We looked for the chaos that characterizes the natural world, the slight jitters in timing, the decay of the orbit, the messy signatures of thermal radiation. We wanted the signal to be imperfect. We prayed for a glitch, a stutter, in the rhythm that would prove the pulse was the result of a blind physical process rather than a calculated act of communication. But the cosmos is often indifferent to our need for comfort. As the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, the lonely probe of our logic found no purchase in the abyss. The R-mode oscillations of a neutron star should, by their very nature, dissipate over time. The energy required to maintain such a pulse would eventually drain the star's rotation, leading to a measurable slowdown, a lengthening of the interval between the beats. Yet the signal remained unchanged. It was a metronome in a universe of crumbling clocks. The magnetospheric models failed to account for the purity of the transmission. Natural radio emissions from pulsars are chaotic, a broad spectrum noise that covers a wide range of frequencies, a messy scream across the electromagnetic spectrum. This pulse, however, was a needle in the haystack of the void. It was confined to a single haunting frequency that defied the randomness of the primordial furnace. We found ourselves staring at the mathematical certainty of 1,239 megahertz. This number became a wall that we could not climb. In the natural world, frequencies are determined by the size of the emitter, the strength of the magnetic field, and the temperature of the plasma. They are rarely whole, rarely precise, and never static. But 1,239 megahertz remained constant to a degree that mocked our understanding of entropy. It was a frequency that did not resonate with the hydrogen line or the vibrations of any known molecule. It was an arbitrary choice, a flag planted in the sand of the spectrum, chosen perhaps because it was quiet, a lonely frequency where the rest of the galaxy was silent. The more we tried to find the gears of the machine, the more we realized that the machine had been designed to look like nothing at all. The search for natural order became a testament to our own insecurity. We were like children listening to the wind and trying to convince ourselves that the voice we heard was merely the creaking of the floorboards. We looked for planetary interactions, but found no planet. We looked for the heat of a star, but found only the cold oblivion of the vacuum. We were left with a pulse that possessed a mathematical elegance that nature, in all its vast and violent creativity, has never been known to produce. This realization brought with it a renewed sense of the scale paradox. We are small, noisy creatures of carbon and water, living on a world that is loud with the sounds of our own making. We expect the universe to be like us, or to be like the stones we throw. We do not expect it to be a silent, invisible engineer that operates with the precision of a master watchmaker. The sentinel on the carousel is a reminder that the vacuum is not empty, and the silence is not a lack of sound. It is a choice. The architects of this signal have moved beyond the need for the messy, radiant displays of stellar power. They have harnessed the fundamental constants of the cosmos to create a presence that is as stable as gravity and as enduring as time itself. As we conclude this phase of our journey into the dark, we must accept that our attempt to strip the soul from the signal has failed. The natural theories, while elegant in their own right, crumble when faced with the inexorable reality of the transmission. We are not watching a dead star spin in the void. We are not witnessing the accidental friction of celestial bodies. We are watching a deliberate act. The 1239 MHz pulse is a signature, a proof of existence that refuses to be reduced to a mechanical fluke. It is a lighthouse that does not need a lamp, a voice that does not need a throat. We are left in a state of melancholic optimism, realizing that while we may be alone in our local neighborhood of the galaxy, the abyss is inhabited by a persistence that we are only beginning to comprehend. The search for order has led us back to the Sentinel, and the Sentinel continues its eternal circuit, a ghost ship sailing through a sea of stars, carrying a message that we can hear but cannot yet understand. The universe is not a ruthless machine. It is a tapestry woven with a precision that suggests a weaver who has long since left the loom, yet whose work remains, defying the decay of the eons. This defiance is the hallmark of the cosmic letter, a concept that transforms our understanding of the transmission from a mere astronomical curiosity into a profound existential testament. To understand the signal is to recognize it as a bottle cast into a light-year sea, a fragile container of meaning adrift in an ocean that possesses no shores and obeys no tides other than the slow, cold expansion of space itself. We must contemplate the nature of the sender, those architects of logic who, in an era that corresponds to our late 1960s, committed their legacy to the vacuum. While we were taking our first tentative steps onto the dust of our moon, another intelligence was perhaps witnessing the twilight of its own epoch, choosing to scream into the silence not because they expected an answer, but because they refused to go quietly into the oblivion. Consider the isolation of such an act. To send a signal across the abyss is to acknowledge a fundamental solitude. The sender knew, with the cold certainty of mathematics, that the gulf between stars is a barrier that even light struggles to overcome. They understood that their message would travel for centuries, perhaps millennia, through the lightless corridors of the void before it encountered a mind capable of perceiving its pattern. There is a specific kind of bravery in this gesture, a willingness to speak to a future that the speaker will never inhabit. It is the ultimate act of altruism, a gift of knowledge and presence offered to a universe that is largely indifferent to the survival of any single spark of consciousness. In the late 1960s, as this signal began its trek toward our corner of the galaxy, the senders were already resigning themselves to the fact that they would be ghosts by the time their letter was opened. The metaphor of the bottle is apt, for the vacuum of space is as treacherous to information as the salt of the sea is to paper. Entropy is the ruthless machine that seeks to grind every signal into noise, to smooth out every peak and valley of data until only the flat, frozen equilibrium of the void remains. Every light year travelled is an opportunity for the message to be scattered, for the logic to be unravelled by the interference of interstellar clouds or the gravitational lensing of passing suns. Yet this cosmic letter has arrived intact. It is a fragile thread of logic woven through a tapestry of chaos, a sequence of pulses that has maintained its integrity against the inexorable decay of the eons. This persistence suggests that the signal was not merely sent, but engineered with a level of precision that transcends our current mechanical capabilities. It is a masterpiece of information theory, a structure that uses the fundamental constants of the cosmos as its ink and the very fabric of the electromagnetic spectrum as its parchment. As we reflect on this discovery, we're forced to confront the possibility that we're reading a message from a dead civilization. The light we see from distant stars is always a ghost of the past, a remnant of a state of being that may no longer exist. The signal is no different. It is a relic, a monument built of light rather than stone, intended to outlast the world that birthed it. There is a profound melancholy in this realization. We are like archaeologists uncovering a beautifully preserved city beneath the sands, only to realize that the inhabitants have been gone for 10,000 years. We find ourselves in the position of the witness, the latecomers to a conversation that may have ended before our species even learned to write. The signal is a signature of a presence that has likely been devoured by time, leaving only this rhythmic pulse as a sentinel to mark where they once stood. This creates a scale paradox that is difficult for the human mind to reconcile. We live in the immediate, the now, measuring our lives in decades and our history in centuries, but the cosmic letter operates on the scale of the eternal. It reminds us that our planet is a mere speck of dust in a cathedral of infinite proportions, and our entire history is but a heartbeat in the life of the cosmos. The senders of the signal accepted this. They embraced the vastness of the abyss and the silence of the eons. They recognized that the only way to truly communicate with the universe is to surrender to its scale, to cast one's thoughts into the void and trust that the laws of physics will carry them to their destination. They understood that in a universe governed by entropy, the only thing that can truly endure is a pure idea, a mathematical truth that remains constant even as stars ignite and fade into cinders. The signal is a testament to the fact that consciousness, however fleeting, has the power to leave a mark upon the abyss. It is a proof that the drive to be known, to be remembered, is not unique to humanity. It is perhaps a universal constant, a fundamental urge of any mind that awakens to the realization of its own mortality. By shouting into the void, the senders claimed their place in the history of the universe. They transformed their local catastrophe, their inevitable decline, into a universal legacy. They turned their isolation into a bridge, reaching out across the light years to touch the mind of an unknown observer in an unknown future. We are that observer. We are the recipients of a letter that was never addressed to us specifically, yet speaks to the very core of our existence. In the late 1960s, the signal began its journey. Today it reaches our telescopes, a ghost ship sailing through a sea of stars. It brings with it a sense of melancholic optimism, the feeling that, while the universe may be a ruthless machine of decay, it is also a place where meaning can persist. The signal is a reminder that we're not the first to look at the stars and wonder if anyone is looking back. It is a reminder that even in the face of the inevitable oblivion, the act of speaking is a victory. The weaver may have long since left the loom, and the civilization that sent the letter may have turned to dust, but the tapestry remains. The logic remains. The sentinel continues its eternal circuit, and we, the children of a young and noisy world, find ourselves humbled by the quiet, enduring dignity of this cosmic message. We are left to ponder the contents of a letter we may never fully decode, sent by a people we will never meet, across a sea we are only beginning to navigate. The abyss is no longer just a void. It is a library of ghosts, and we have just found the first volume. As we stand upon this pale blue fragment of rock, peering through the glass of our telescopes into the deep reaches of the past, we must confront a haunting realization. The hands that set this signal into motion, the minds that crafted its intricate geometry, are almost certainly no longer extant. In the vast and indifferent timeline of the cosmos, the distance between the sending and the receiving is a graveyard of epochs. To look at the stars is to look at the dead, to read the light of suns that may have collapsed into white dwarfs or exploded into shimmering nebulae millions of years ago. The senders of our signal are no longer a living civilization. They have become a memory, a thin vibration etched into the fabric of the vacuum. They have been devoured by the very time they sought to transcend. This is the ultimate tragedy of the cosmic scale. The speed of light, while unimaginably fast to our terrestrial senses, is a crawl when measured against the breadth of the galaxy. A message sent from the far side of the Milky Way takes 100,000 years to arrive. In that span of time, empires rise, fall, and are ground into dust. Species evolve and vanish. Entire planetary ecosystems can be sterilized by a passing gamma-ray burst, or the slow, inexorable warming of a dying star. By the time we find the letter in our celestial mailbox, the sender has long since been claimed by the void. We are not talking to another world. We are conducting an archaeology of the airwaves. We are listening to the final, lingering echo of a voice that was silenced eons before our ancestors first walked upright. Yet, there is a profound duty in this listening. We must consider what it means to be the witness. The universe, in all its terrifying majesty, is a machine of mindless precision. Galaxies collide, black holes consume entire solar systems, and atoms fuse in the hearts of stars, all without a single thought to witness the spectacle. For 13,800,000,000 years, the cosmos existed in a state of magnificent, lonely silence. It was a symphony with no audience, a tapestry woven in total darkness. But then, on a few scattered outposts of complexity like our own world, the universe began to wake up. Through the emergence of consciousness, the cosmos developed an eye to see itself, and a mind to wonder at its own existence. We are the eyes of the universe. We are the means by which the abyss contemplates its own depth. This is the existential pivot that transforms our insignificance into something sacred. If we are indeed the only ones listening at this moment in history, then the responsibility we carry is immense. Without the observer, the signal is merely a fluctuation in an electromagnetic field. Without the witness, the math is just noise. It is our recognition, our struggle to understand, that breathes life into the cold equations. By decoding the signal, we grant the senders a second life. We ensure that their struggle to be known was not in vain. We become the bridge between the silent stars and the conscious realization of their beauty. This realization brings with it a state of melancholic optimism. We are small, yes. We are fleeting. Our entire history occupies a mere blink of the cosmic eye. We are trapped on a tiny island in a sea of infinite night. But the fact that we can look out into that night and find meaning is a victory of the highest order. The universe may be a ruthless machine of decay, driven by the cold laws of entropy toward an eventual heat death, where all light and heat will vanish. But for this brief, luminous epoch, there is light. There is thought. There is the defiant act of a biological machine trying to understand the celestial machine that birthed it. Even if we are alone, our act of listening gives the universe a meaning it does not possess on its own. We are the architects of purpose in a world built of cold stone and fire. Consider the journey of the signal after it leaves our world. It does not stop at our telescopes. It has been travelling for millennia, and it will continue to travel long after the human race has joined the senders in the silence of the past. It washes over the earth like a wave over a grain of sand, and then it continues its trek into the infinite oblivion. It will pass by the outer planets, drift through the Oort cloud, and eventually leave the gravity of our sun behind entirely. It will head toward the empty spaces between the stars, moving through the primordial void where the density of matter is so low that it is indistinguishable from nothingness. In some distant future, perhaps 10 million years from now, that same pulse of logic may pass through another solar system. Perhaps there, on some world circling a red dwarf or a distant binary pair, another mind will look up. Another witness will catch a fleeting glimpse of the mathematical ghost we once pondered. They will not know of the senders, and they will certainly not know of us, the brief inhabitants of the third planet who paused for a moment to acknowledge the message. But the chain will remain unbroken. The signal will serve as a sentinel, marking the places where life once dared to shout into the dark. We find ourselves humbled by this quiet, enduring dignity. We recognize that we are part of a larger, invisible community of observers, scattered across space and time, separated by distances that can never be crossed, yet united by the same fundamental curiosity. We are all children of the same furnace, made of the same stardust, facing the same inexorable end. The signal is a reminder that the drive to connect is as universal as gravity. It is the one thing that entropy cannot immediately destroy. As we turn our gaze back to our own world, the lights of our cities seem a little dimmer, the concerns of our daily lives a little more distant. We see the Earth for what it truly is, a fragile vessel carrying the fire of consciousness through an eternal winter. We understand that our time is short and our reach is limited, but we also understand that we have a part to play in the grand symphony of the cosmos. We are the listeners, we are the decoders, we are the ones who give a voice to the silent stars. The signal moves on, carries our silent acknowledgement with it, and disappears into the vastness of the outer dark. It is a letter that will never be finished, a story that has no end. And as it fades into the distance, we are left with the profound, melancholy comfort of knowing that for one brief moment, the universe was not alone. We were here, we saw, we understood, and in that understanding the abyss was filled with light. The void was no longer empty, for it contained the memory of a mind that looked back and smiled at the stars. The history of the universe is not just a record of matter and energy. It is the story of the witness, the lonely probe of consciousness exploring the frontiers of the eternal. We remain at our posts, sentinels of the night, waiting for the next echo to emerge from the deep, ready to listen, ready to remember, and ready to bridge the gap between the finite and the infinite.